Ms. Canning, it looks like it's 3 o'clock if you're ready to get started. Good afternoon, everyone.
Please do. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. And welcome to the City of Boise Hearing Examiner Public Hearing. Just a few things to start off with for today's proceedings. First off, everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. We'll then go to the appellant and or applicant, and then to the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association. This will be followed by questions from the hearing examiner. After that, we will proceed to public testimony, starting with those that are here in person, then those who signed up, and then finally those who are online virtually. If you are attending through your telephone virtually, you can type *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker should start out by stating their name and address for the record. And then a reminder, each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. And then finally, the applicant is allowed time for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the hearing examiner will deliberate and render a decision. And with that, Ms. Canning, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I will call this meeting to order. And to begin with, I am an independent decision maker hired by the City of Boise and approved by the City Council. I make decisions on variances and administrative appeals. Any request to reconsider these decisions must be formally requested in writing pursuant to City Code. We only use a consent agenda to adopt findings related to previous decisions. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff. And thank you all for attending tonight. For the record, I, Anna Canning, will be the hearing examiner rendering decisions this afternoon. It still says tonight on here, doesn't it? So there we go. Minutes acceptance. Our first order of business is to accept the minutes from our March 26, 2025 hearing. I have reviewed those minutes and accept them for the record. Our next item is new business, and it's CZC 2498 reconsideration request. So before I make a decision, oh, do you have a presentation? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Thank you, staff. I wasn't expecting that.
All right. Good afternoon, Ms. Canning. The item before you is a request for reconsideration of the appeal of CZC 24-98. As a reminder, the appeal of the planning director's approval of a triplex located at 2921 West Pleasanton Avenue was originally brought before you at the February 26th hearing. At that time, the appeal was granted and the director's approval of the application was reversed. On March 28th, the applicant submitted a request for reconsideration and submitted a memo detailing their reasons for the request, which are summarized on this slide. Primarily, the applicant contends that the decision regarding the appeal was based on an incorrect classification of the use as 3 single-family homes on a single parcel, rather than any of the appeal grounds which were brought forward by the appellant. The request for reconsideration also acknowledges that the zoning ordinance does not anticipate a residential use comprised of 3 detached units with individual garages, but asserts that the hearing examiner's decision violated the planning director's authority to determine the classification of unlisted uses in code and failed to consider the project's compliance with the purpose of the R2 zone. The planning team finds the reasons presented by the applicant to be sufficient grounds for reconsideration. However, if you do not find the reasons presented to be sufficient, the applicant has also provided revised plans, which include 3 dwelling units under a single roof in strict compliance with the code definition of a triplex. The plans are included in your packet and a selection are shown on this slide. The procedures for reconsideration are also shown on this slide. If the request is not granted, the hearing examiner's original decision regarding the appeal will be upheld. If the request is granted, a future hearing will be scheduled. At that time, the hearing examiner would have the option to reevaluate the appeal grounds provided by the appellant in relation to either the plans originally submitted with the application or the revised plans submitted with the request for reconsideration. Upon reconsideration, the hearing examiner's initial decision regarding the appeal may be affirmed, reversed, or modified to comply with applicable law. In conclusion, the planning team recommends that the request for reconsideration be granted, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. I have no questions. All right. Before I make my decision, we're going to have a conversation with the applicant and staff. If you want to come up, whoever's representing. And let's go ahead and get your name and address on the record, please.
Kevin Schalk, 1257 West River Street.
And you are with,
I'm with the architect Clancy Rockwell.
great. So I am going to stand by my decision. I do believe that the zoning code contemplates 3 houses on one lot and specifically says it's not allowed. That's where I come down. So the fact that the director called it a triplex wasn't in his authority in my book. So, but we have a couple different routes we can take. If the alternative you presented looks promising, I can't tell you one way or the other if it meets the full thing. So the first option would be you turn in a full application with the 3 units all under one roof, and staff has time to review that. And then it comes back for me in a reconsideration hearing. Or the other option is, I do know that staff is working on a text amendment that would remove the requirement that on residential districts, you're only allowed 1 primary use. That's what was holding you up before. And they have taken it out of the amended code. So it would allow you to do your original project. I don't know the exact timing on that code change. So, and it's a gamble. I would think that the code change would go through as approved because I think staff is looking for it to solve a number of problems that they're having in implementation of the code. So that's, but it's not a guarantee is what I wanted to say. So do you have a preference on which way you would like to go of those 2 particular options?
Well, if there's a possibility that we can continue with the original design, we would prefer that. But seeing as we don't know the timing of that.
And we can pull in staff and ask if they know. So
Yeah, and Ms. Canning, I can answer that. But first, I think in our eyes, we see that there would be maybe a potential 3rd option. You know, we're pretty familiar with this site and code, and we could review in the 1-month time span between today and the next hearing examiner, the new plans as they've been submitted, and
Okay.
bring that forward with a report, which would save the applicant significant amount of time and keep this moving and still provide the review I believe you're looking for.
what do you think is the timing on the code amendments going forward?
Don't hold me to this, Ms. Canning, but theoretically, they could be implemented in the July timeframe.
So that
Repeat that.
he thinks they might be implemented in the July timeframe. So they would go to P and Z and then to council, and then they would be effective. That's probably a not conservative estimate. So maybe you're looking at August, but
Mhm.
or you can come back in May with the triplex under one roof.
Hmm.
And if you want to think about it for a second, I can move on to the rest of the agenda and we can
Yeah,
bring this up again.
might want to discuss that.
Okay.
yeah.
How do I go about moving that to the end of the agenda? Do I just continue it to the end of the agenda? Anybody know? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this is just a conversation.
Jim Clancy with Clancy Rockwell Architects. The question is, if we do a new submittal as a triplex, would it come before you again, or would it just be
Yes,
because?
because you're in a reconsideration loop right now. So it would come to me as a reconsideration.
It would be a reconsideration, not a new application?
Right. That's what I was proposing.
Okay.
You're talking the triplex under one roof, right?
Yes.
If you wait till the new code is implemented, you probably never see me.
And,
Let's hope.
well, I was wondering if it's a new application,
Are you
it
going to get
wouldn't
stuck?
be an appeal, so why would it come
Oh, no, it's because you're in a reconsideration loop right now.
even as a triplex would?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And
suppose I could deny the reconsideration and you could really start over with new fees, new application, new everything, and then it would not come to me.
well, we'll take that approach then, the triplex approach, and work with the staff
Okay, so, and you would like, so,
to get on the next hearing.
okay, great.
And
And did you state your name and who you were for the record?
Jim Glancy with Glancy Rockwell
Okay.
Architects.
Thank you.
And just a clarification, how is this three primary uses versus what the single use with three primary units?
I would
still-
encourage you to look at the findings that went along
I
with
did.
my last decision. So
Okay, I'll look at that.
a
again.
single family house is a primary use, a second single family house is a second primary use, and the residential districts only allow one primary use.
Okay. Okay. And I guess that's where we disagree. Okay. that
Yeah.
it was not a single family. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, then I will, we will have let's see, I will grant the reconsideration request with a full new staff memo from staff at our next hearing, May 28th. All right, moving on to the next one. We have CBA 26-6, Douglas Candle. And it's located at 2293 South Ridgeway View. And it is a variance to encroach into the rear setback. And we will hear from staff.
Good afternoon, Ms. Canning. Before you today is CBA 25-00006, a variance to encroach 5 feet into the required 15-foot rear setback in an R1C zone within the Hillside Development and Wildland Urban Interface overlays. The property was first developed in the 1970s in Ada County. The properties were originally on septic but converted to sewer after the fact. Annexation occurred in 2003 with 3 encroaching parking structures that have since been removed from the site. The lot is regularly shaped, meets all the dimensional standards for the zone, and has slopes typical of other properties in the area. The property also has an attached 2-car garage that meets the requirements of the development code for code compliant parking. The applicant is proposing to build a detached garage, as you can see on screen and summarized in your project report. The structure would not only have a 5-foot encroachment into the rear setback, but also conflict with platted easements and sewer lines, which will be covered later in the presentation. Due to the square footage of the structure and the lack of an alley to serve it, no permitted encroachments are available for the structure as it's currently proposed. Therefore, it is expected of new structured and additional parking to meet the requirements of the development code, and granting a variance would give a special right to this property. In the R1C zone, a 5-foot interior side and 15-foot rear setback are required, in addition to the 5-foot encroachment into the rear setback. The proposed structure also conflicts with a platted 10-foot public utilities, drainage, and irrigation easement, which the city is currently using and has public infrastructure within. Therefore, we would not be supportive of vacating the easement either. The location of the proposed structure conflicts with 2 existing sewer mains as well, and therefore Public Works cannot support the location of it, as it would prevent access to the lines if repairs are needed. As summarized in the project report, preventing access to public infrastructure for the maintenance and repair is in conflict with public interest and would create material negative impacts to public health. As shown on the screen and summarized in your project report, the variance does not meet any of the required findings for approval, and as such, the planning team is recommending denial of CBA 25-00006. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions. And also we have Mike Shepard from Public Works for any potential questions related to the sewer lines.
Thank you. I have no questions right now, but thank you, Public Works, for coming. Thank you. All right, now we will hear from the applicant. Do we have an applicant?
If there's anyone online representing the applicant, can you virtually raise your hand?
Okay.
This isn't noticed.
No, it is not. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? All right. We'll now open the public hearing, and I have no one signed up for to testify in the public hearing. And I think we've already checked online. Is that correct? And maybe sorry, it was Mike, right? Would you come up for a moment and we'll just get a couple comments on the record before I make a decision?
My name is Mike Shepard. I work for in the Public Works Department.
I've heard that name before. I know that name. All right. Mr. Shepard, thank you for coming up to the podium. And just for the record, there are the proposed location of the structures would cross 2 live sewer lines, correct?
3.
3.
actually. It's a-
Okay.
Yeah.
And would there be any possibility that landowner could relocate those in any way possible?
Unfortunately not, because it's a very shallow line and minimum slope. So we don't, and plus the location's on a hillside. So it's just not really feasible to relocate that line.
Okay, great.
Because it's got upstream, downstream, and upstream from 2 different directions coming into that manhole that's located on his property.
Okay, thank you. That was all I wanted to get on the
Okay.
record.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right, normally I would be inclined to continue it, given that the applicant is not here, but I think that the sewer issue makes this kind of an unfeasible variance to even really consider. So for that reason, I move to close the public hearing, and I will render a decision to deny the variance request. Okay. Moving on. Now we have CVA 25-1 from Platform Architecture Design at 1319 North 8th Street. And it's a variance to encroach into the front setback to deviate from the streetscape standards and access and connectivity requirements, and from the long-term bicycle parking standards on 0.13 acres in R2 HDO. With that, we'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Ms. Canning. And I will do my best to fumble my way through this application for you with this presentation, but I think we'll get there. So yeah, as stated, this is a property over here on the corner of 8th Street in Rescue in an R2 zoning district with a historic district overlay. So the project, as you saw in your project report, is for a proposed 2-story addition to an existing legal non-conforming structure and use. The bottom floor is anticipated to be a neighborhood cafe with the top or the second story an extension of the existing yoga studio. So in these renderings and elevations, you can kind of see what that's envisioned to look like. Just want to point out that the second story does jut out over the first story, which is envisioned to be left open as kind of a patio space for the future neighborhood cafe. So a little bit of history. You're probably familiar with this, or this property may look familiar, as it is the location of the old Hollywood Market, which was built, let's see, back in 1927, so nearly 90 years ago. We did formally establish both the commercial use and the structure as legal non-conforming back in 2012. Following that, there was an approved conditional use permit which expanded that use and added a parking reduction, which was associated with the commercial use that you see there today, which is a yoga studio. As you saw in the project report, there's also kind of a winding road of entitlement applications that need to be obtained prior to submitting for building permits. So today we're at kind of the variance stage. Following today's decision, they would be required to get a conditional use permit for another expansion of that legal non-conforming use and re-looking at the previously approved parking reduction. Following that, there is an administrative zoning certificate for the neighborhood cafe. And then finally, looking through the lens of the historic district, a certificate of appropriateness would be required. So today, we have those three variances up on the screen. So first off is to the streetscape and access and connectivity standards. So this is to keep that existing 6-foot wide sidewalk rather than install what would be required, which would be a 10-foot wide path or sidewalk with 8-foot wide planter strips, since both 8th Street and Rescue are collector roadways. So this particular variance staff is in support of granting. A lot of that hinges on the unique characteristics and use of the site as a commercial use. So within the North End Neighborhood Historic District, we do have some guidelines that speak to maintaining the integrity of the district, this sense of time and place. So a sense of feel. These are all kind of like words that are used in the guidelines. And historically, this corner has always been a commercial node within the neighborhood. And so with that, there has been a different streetscape in front of it. So historically, it was just all paved. There's actually a driveway at one point that served along the side there. I've kind of tried to outline about where it was in red on that site plan. That then got closed with the change of use in 2012, 2013. And so in the planning team's minds, the kind of planners place to sit and additional bike racks is more in line with what would be seen in front of a commercial use, kind of think like downtown streetscape standards. You don't have a full planter strip, but you have a place for people to gather. In addition, looking up and down the two streets, there are 7 trees along 8th Street, which would meet the minimum number of trees you would need for a block face that long. If, say, like the whole thing were to come in together as one development, same goes for along Rescue. So we're comfortable with the amount of landscaping that's present in the area.
I think I'll throw in my questions for each of these just so we can kind of keep them straight.
Yeah, let's do it.
Can you go back to the aerial view of the site? So when you look there, you see the sidewalk coming from the south toward the north, and it looks like it was all done at one time. And then you see some newer concrete. So that newer concrete is where the driveway was.
Yeah, I actually have some slides that may show this a little bit better. So here you have 2013 was the last aerial that we have where you can kind of make out that there's a driveway. It's an angled, that planter strip is angled,
Right.
you see. And so at that point in time, you could still drive into the property right after that. So that was right about when they were going through the CUP for this expansion and putting in the yoga studio. In 2016, you can see they've put in a patio. So that's no longer a drive aisle. And then in 2019, you'll notice the concrete is the same color as the concrete on the corner. So I don't have 100% confirmation on this, but I think ACHD was going through all of the North End and redoing all of those intersections to make them more compliant with accessibility standards. And they must have just figured they would close off that driveway approach with the new curb line at that time too.
And is there any official documentation from the Historic Commission or as part of that historic designation that says that street pattern is important?
Ms. Canning, since we haven't brought this before the Historic Commission yet, and there hasn't been a certificate of appropriateness that has been issued yet, we don't have anything official referencing whether that particular section of streetscape is specifically historic. No.
And do you know what the distance is from that what appears to be the sidewalk coming up from the south to the curb is?
I think if I had to, it's probably around 50 to 60 feet at the most. That drive aisle is probably a 20-foot drive aisle. Width, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Ms. Canning, maybe I'm not understanding which length you're
If
referring
that
to.
driveway had been replaced with a landscape buffer, how wide would it be?
So if you can see my mouse, you're looking for this dimension
Yes.
here. I believe it is close to the 8-foot mark because that sidewalk is 6 feet and it looks slightly larger than that.
Okay.
Any other questions on this particular variance?
No,
Okay.
I just wish the code were more flexible. Go ahead.
So our second variance that we have in front of us is to encroach into the front setback. So R2 does require a 10-foot front setback. You can see there that they're proposing a 3-foot 8-inch encroachment for that second story of the building. In this case, the planning team cannot make the findings to support this as the lot is typical in shape, it's flat, and we haven't been presented with any reasons why the existing structure would prevent the new structure from being placed at the 10-foot setback. Any questions about this one before we?
No, thank you.
And then finally, the third variance before us is to not have to provide long-term bike parking spaces. So when you look at the total size of the project between the neighborhood cafe and the yoga studio, 5 long-term bike parking spaces would be required. They're requesting 0. They are providing, I believe, 20 or proposing 20 short-term bike parking spaces. And the reasoning there is that the instructors and the folks working at the cafe and using the cafe would not require long-term bike parking as they wouldn't be there for very long, just due to the nature of the use. Staff could not use that reasoning to make the findings, the required findings for this exception to code, so would be recommending denial of it.
And how many short-term are required?
Let's see, off the top, I think it's around 12, but I may have to double check that for you.
Do they have more than
What would be
sufficient?
required. Yeah, sorry, now it's coming back to me. So the conditional use permit from 2013, as part of the parking reduction, they proposed more short-term bike parking. So 12 was that number. And so that would be, I believe, higher than what would actually be normally required. So that condition would still stand. So they're going even above and beyond what the original CUP required.
But this,
For the short term, excuse me, but 0 for
correct.
long term.
But this CUP will basically replace that CUP once they apply for it, correct?
Correct. The following CUP.
And so the assessment you're providing today is of all required off-street parking, all required short-term parking, and all required long-term parking, bike parking, sorry. What is it?
Yeah, so
Yeah, long-term.
for today, yeah, we're looking at the whole project with this new proposal.
Okay. And is there not an alternative compliance section in the code for any parking, for bicycle parking?
Ms. Canning, the variance process is the route available for this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so in conclusion, yeah, we do recommend approval of the streetscape standards along 8th and Rescue, and then denial of the other 2 variances. And if there's any additional questions, happy to answer those.
No, thank you. All right, now we will hear from the applicant. Somebody had raised their hand earlier.
Yes, and I see Sally Riley has raised her hand.
Not the applicant, but I'm a neighbor.
You'll get a chance. Just wait a moment and I'll, that's all right.
Said one was approved, one was denied. I was trying to.
you're fine. I'll let you know.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
we can.
Great. This is Sally Riley.
Thank you, Sally. Can you say your, for whom you work in your address, please?
Oh, yes, I own the Hollywood Market Yoga Studio. The address of the studio or my home address?
Either one.
Oh, okay. 1319 North 8th Street. And is the address for the studio.
Okay. And what would you like to tell us?
Well, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of of history too. Purchased the Hollywood Market in 2012 for the purpose of it being a yoga studio. And the reason was because I just absolutely fell in love with the place and thought that it was such a important place for all of the neighbors that came throughout history of Boise. That building was there for connection. And although we weren't, selling beer, I really felt like continuing it with a yoga studio was a great way to still connect people together in the neighborhood. I know that everybody doesn't go to yoga, and I really have always had a dream too of having a coffee shop. And I kind of kept that to myself, but I recently have had numerous people just come up to me and say, "Hey, have you ever thought about having a coffee shop here? I think it would be so cool. It would be a great place for people that don't necessarily come to yoga to be able to come and gather. And it's a great location for people to walk." And so that was sort of why I, have started pursuing this. And also it kind of allows me to enlarge my second room that we use for kids yoga. We have a very small little room in the back that we use, and sometimes people call and ask to rent it for events and things. Our other room is heated, and so it's really difficult to cool it down. But that room above the coffee shop is really going to be meant for other classes, groups, and people that want to use the space in the neighborhood for other types of meetings. And so for me, pushing, toward the sidewalk a little bit more is why I just want the space to be as big as possible, especially because there's a lot of expenses that are going into this. And to get the rooms as big as I need them to be able to use the space adequately, the more space I can get for my project, the better. And, in doing a coffee shop, being able to differentiate myself with some homemade recipes and things like that, that 3.8 feet allows me to put appliances in and, be able to cook on site and things like that, because it is a really small space. That I did want to clarify too, the filling of that driveway from when it was a drive-through pickup beer, when it was the Hollywood Market, that was part of my conditional use permit, along with paving, I believe it was 20 or 30 feet of the alley, and that concrete that looks different. I was required by ACHD to do it that way. And so that was why we did that back then. It was very expensive. I think it was $30,000 to do the driveway and that little sidewalk area. And that was all I was asked to do, is put the concrete there. So I'm hoping I don't have to tear it out for some reason.
Is that the end of your presentation, Ms. Riley?
Oh, so yeah, I guess that's what we are looking for too, is just being able to get, bringing the building out. I feel that it's not adding anything to the neighborhood by having it pushed back, and bringing it out a little bit more. It makes the business look more upfront and in line with the other building that's been existing for 100 years. And it kind of creates our own little, kind of streetscape for that area. So to me, I feel like it's pushing the building back is really not serving that big of a purpose. And I'm not really sure if it will look as good. And it's a kind of a cost, thing for me, as far as 3.8 feet. It really is you know, a total for both floors, it's like 150 square feet of space that we could be using toward our goals and our purpose.
Okay, thank you. I did have a couple questions for you. Can you tell me, like for the yoga studio, how many employees are there for more than, let's say, 2 hours?
3?
3?
Yeah,
So
well, I have one manager, and she's usually there for 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. And then I have a massage therapist, and sometimes there's a second massage therapist, and they usually don't see more than 3 or 4 clients in a day.
So it's yoga and massage and Now
Yes.
Cafe?
Yes.
Okay. And how many employees do you anticipate for the cafe that would be there longer than 2 to 3 hours?
I'm anticipating 2 to 3 employees for about 3 or 4 hours, and possibly maybe 1 employee that would stay longer than that, maybe into the afternoon, but in the morning, maybe 2 to 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? Thank you. And you are the official neighborhood spokesman? Are you the official neighborhood association spokesman?
I am.
Okay.
President right there, so I don't know what official neighborhood spokesman is, but I would like to offer.
I understand, and you will have an opportunity. We just have a list, an order we go through, and you will be part of the public hearing. So I will get to you. We're not quite there yet. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Canning.
And
My
Ms.
name-
Canning, I do apologize, Eric. I don't mean to cut you off there. I do have another hand up, Catherine Sewell, who is online, who is also listed as an applicant. I just want to
I'm
make
sorry.
sure there wasn't something. She's the architect. I apologize. Make sure there wasn't something that she wanted to add. Catherine, you should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, and I'm hoping, sorry, Kathy Sewell with Platform Architecture and Design, 280 North 8th, Suite 118. We are the architect, and we just wanted Sally, the owner, to sort of give start the hearing off with her presentation. So I'm hoping that I can jump in and finish out our time with kind of going through the staff report and that. That's okay?
Yes, I believe you had about 6 minutes left. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I will try and be quick. Can I share my screen? Is that possible?
Let me promote you to a panelist. Kathy, give me 1 second.
I love Kathy. She's so cool.
There you are. Yep, you should be able to share your screen now. Kind of at the bottom, a green button.
Okay, hello, here I am. Share screen, okay. Lord, where am I? Wait, okay, here we go. Maybe? Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thank you for having us today, and I appreciate staff filling in for Madison, I think, who was our plan reviewer for the project but could not be there. So what I'd first like to do is just kind of go through some of staff's comments and kind of bring it back to the variance approval criteria. And the first one is that, staff kind of alluded to it in their presentation about the historic commercial use of the property. And part of the variance approval criteria is the hardship associated with the property itself due to the characteristics of the site. And in staff's report, they primarily focused on the lot dimensions within the R2 and or the physical characteristics of the site. There's no topography issues in that. But what we've sort of made our focus in our project is the characteristic of the site as a commercial use. And within the zoning code, 1103 use regulations, it does talk about land use of a property as being a characteristic of the site, as well as in, we're in the historic overlay district. And so that too uses characteristic as cultural characteristic, historic, and that. So I guess what we're trying to do here is to move beyond physical characteristics of a site for, I guess, reasoning behind our what we believe is the approval criteria for the variance application. So I'm going to try and go through this quickly. But so what I'm showing here, and a lot of this information was referenced in our submittal application, and I'm now just kind of showing in more detail. This first image here is from the Boise City Boise City Inventory of Historic Places. And this just really reiterates kind of what staff was saying and what we've been saying. The property actually started out as a commercial use back in 1901, which you can see down here at the bottom for the Davis and Company grocers. Up here at the top, you do see the Hollywood Market operated from 1930 to present. And I think staff indicated that the building was constructed around 1927. Down here, this just kind of gets into the use of the property. But down here, I thought this was somewhat noteworthy in there, the significance. And they are noting the significance of this property as part of the community development. So within that greater North End Neighborhood Historic District, this property was significant as part of the overall development of it, not architecturally, but just part of that use as one of a few commercial uses within that area. And then in our analysis as well, we provided Sanborn maps, and these were done back from 1903. This one, what I want to show here is here's our property, commercial use, and how that is constructed right at the corner. And you can see this is right after the area was platted and development is occurring. A lot of residential uses being developed. You can see that, at this time, there's no setback criteria. They're just sort of being constructed in no uniform pattern, alignment, or anything. So this is back in 1903. Continuing on in 1912, here's our property once again, maintaining that corner commercial use. Additional development is happening at this time. And then the next one back in this is 1956, showing our property here, a little bit different. And that's probably what staff is alluding to, that in 1920 or so, there was potentially a fire, some rebuild, some additions. But our property maintained that commercial use. So at this point, 1956, this area is very well developed. Practically every lot has a structure on it. And which is interesting, I'll back up for a sec, is that this is 10 years prior to the zoning of the Boise City's first zoning ordinance, which at that time in 1966 established this as a residential district, established setbacks and a little more lot sizes than that. So you can see here, development pattern is varied. Commercial use, this is the only commercial use in this area, and it's placed at the corner. And that's where we think that this is a unique characteristic of this site and of this neighborhood. This was alluded to, I mentioned in our document as well, back in 2013, NENA commissioned TAG Historic Research, I think, to put forth research on the North End neighborhood grocery stores, the corner markets. And I just tag these here, and I think I did mention them in our report. But, you know, some stores such as the Hollywood Market at 1319 North 8th, the Greenhouse Grocery at 920 Pueblo, and the Eagle Market at 1512 North 10th Street were built flush to the sidewalks with attached awnings on facade that extended over the entrance to indicate a commercial business. And I think,
Ms. Sewell, I'll
Yep.
give you a couple more minutes because I
Okay.
asked Ms. Riley questions, but you need to start wrapping things up a little bit.
Sorry, I thought there was 30 minutes total. Okay, so I'll just kind of breeze through the rest. I think what we're trying to indicate here is that the use as a commercial use is the unique characteristic of this site, which makes development in a zone that has now had a zoning code come into play, established residential is a residential district, residential setback requirements. It's very difficult to develop within that kind of criteria.
Yeah.
This is also referenced by staff in their evaluation for the setback or the streetscape. They're acknowledging that being in an historic district and a historic structure does have its own set of unique challenges, and that also makes it difficult to comply with current zoning requirements. And then I'm just going to quickly go through here. These were other examples of commercial properties that were noted in that tag brochure. Commercial uses historically that were built to the sidewalk, close to the street, still active today, and working with the neighborhood. These were examples of how within that North End Historic District, setbacks were not consistent. This is actually a new construction built in 2023. That's approximately 5 feet, maybe 6 feet from the sidewalk. These down here are historic structures along Eastman, just down from this structure up here, that are maybe about 5-6 feet off. And I think what we're trying to show here is there is no consistent setback pattern and in this area, and it has evolved over time. The last one is we feel like there's some precedence for approval for this project in Hyde Park, Lost Grove Brewery. This is back in 2023, CBA 23-00022. They infilled a patio space, and with this, they were the building was contributing status. Their setback requirement was 10 feet as well. So it was all new construction, and they were allowed to build to that property line with an approximate 900 square foot structure. So we do think that there's precedent for this type of use, commercial use, which is unique to the area. And sorry, I will end it there, I guess.
Thank you. I may have some questions for you later, Ms. Sewell,
Okay.
but for now, I think we're going to move on with the rest of the testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Ms. Canning, you had a couple questions I was able to follow up on that I thought maybe would be useful for you to have that information before we proceed. So the first, you had the question about the length of the landscape strip to the south. It does appear that it's probably closer to 6, maybe 7 feet wide rather than the full 8. And
is that true on the north side too, on Residue?
It looks to be about the same, yeah. So
Okay.
they do not look to be the full 8 foot wide landscape strip. And then which would then mean the distance from the back of curb to the property line would be less than 18 feet as well, just to provide some reference for what the requirements would be. The applicant, who looks like she may have actually CAD drawings up, may be able to provide more accurate numbers than me looking at it, but wanted you to have that information. And then also just kind of a procedural thing with the chicken and egg question of historic having to go after this. There could be a situation in which a condition was added that historic make a certain finding in order to support a variance finding, which we could discuss if that's something you'd like to discuss at a later date in this.
I will consider that as the testimony goes on. Great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, may we hear from the Neighborhood Association?
Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Canning. My name is Eric Hagan. I'm the president of the North End Neighborhood Association. I'm also the planning and zoning chair, hence why I'm here to represent the neighborhood on that behalf. I also have with me Travis Campion, who is a board member as well. And he's a neighbor, lives within a block of Hollywood Market Yoga. And he's going to address some items there. I'm an architect in my daily practice, and we'll address the technical aspects later.
And please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Ms. Canning. My name is Travis Campion. I'm on the board of the North End Neighborhood Association. And I live at 1415 North 8th Street, which is half a block away from the Hollywood Market. And I've lived in the North End for 45 of my 50 years. So I can tell you my biggest concern about this is the parking. Whatever deal they made with the parking in the first place, they never followed through with. And there's the people who come to the yoga studio are not from our neighborhood. There might be a few people who walk there, but I know most of the people in that area around my house, and most of them detest that place because there's never anywhere to park. The people who go there probably come from up on the hill in their giant SUVs and hog up all the parking, and especially around dinner or when people are getting off work. In fact, last night I drove 450 miles from Utah. And when I got home, I had to park down the street and haul my luggage in about a block away from my house. And this is really concerning to me that they're going to try to add more stuff to it to make more people go there. I don't have off-street parking, and so I mean, it's not right. I don't feel like the yoga studio serves our neighborhood, and I just and they don't care either. Just from my,
What makes you say that?
just from my experience from having to deal with them with other issues, and there's a lot of sense of entitlement and
Them. Yeah.
I don't know.
I've never met.
If you want an example, one time, this was years ago, but my family and I were sitting down to dinner. It was about 7 o'clock, and all of a sudden we hear somebody shouting like it's coming from inside our house. And I realized what it was. I could hear them like shouting out yoga poses. And so I walked down to the yoga market, and I'm like, no, you guys can't do Jane Fonda's workout while we're all eating dinner. And there were other people coming out of the house saying like, what the hell's going on? So what I was met with at that moment was just, bad attitude and sense of entitlement. And so the reason why I think that, another reason why I don't think they don't care is it's still happening. People are still parking in front of everyone's houses. There's nowhere to park. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Ms. Canning. For the record, my name is Eric Hagan. My address is 809 North 18th Street. And in all transparency, I have used the yoga studio at Hollywood Market Yoga firsthand and have experience on how busy it is between the beginning and the end of a yoga session. I just wanted to address a couple of things. This is a variance hearing, and I've heard a lot of talk about use and design and historic character. There's 2 more hearings after this that they get to talk about that. So it really doesn't have much relevance here. When we're talking about commercial properties going up against a property line in Hyde Park is a commercial zone. It's a completely different zone. It's all zoned that way. So again, that doesn't apply here. To address the specific variance requests, we're in line with the staff requirements. Basically, the North End has an established front yard setback with the right of way, with the 5 and 6 foot sidewalks, with the 8 foot, 6 foot and 8 foot lawn mow strip in there. The new zoning code, unfortunately, doesn't take that into account, and every single project in the North End is now going to have to come before you and ask for this variance. So hopefully that'll get fixed because we definitely do not want 10-foot sidewalks in our neighborhood with 8-foot mow strips. So we're in agreement with that one. Regarding the setback, again, we don't see any hardship here that is preventing them from doing a usable project. It's 3.5 feet, 3.8 feet. They could still have a usable space, but the bigger question is, why do they want to double their space? There's already limited parking in the neighborhood. There's already, it's already at max with people in the yoga studio. It's actually uncomfortable how many people they stuff in there, and they're all coming and going at the same time. Now, a coffee shop, that makes sense. People are in and out all day, every hour. That's fine, but why push into the setback just to be able to fit more space for a second yoga studio upstairs? Plus, we'll get into the specifics of that in a second. And then the last one is the bike parking. In 2013, when they had their original approval, they asked for a reduction in parking, stating that most of the users will be coming via bike or walking, and that has not been shown to be the case at all. I've seen people drive in and park in the neighborhood, more so than people like us who are actually walking there. Addressing the 4 items that a variance has to be held up upon. The first one is there are undue hardship because of the characteristics of the site. And as staff has noted, no, there's not. Sort of normal rectangular site. There's nothing constraining them from doing what can be done. The second item, granting of the variance will not be in conflict with the public interest, is actually in line with the 4th item. So I'll address that in a second. Granting the variance will not provide a right or special privilege to the property. And clearly it does. No one else in this neighborhood can build right up against the property line unless they are already an established use. So anyone else trying to apply for this would not be able to get that, which in essence already gives them a special privilege or use that the rest of the neighborhood doesn't have. The final item, granting the variance will not create material or negative impacts on the public health, safety, or welfare, or any negative impacts to property owners or the quiet enjoyment of the property. And building a building within, up into the front setback definitely negatively impacts the other properties in the neighborhood, the residential properties in the neighborhood. And I think that pretty much covers all my points.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have a question. Did you take this application before your neighborhood association?
Yes, we did. We discussed it at the last board meeting, and we've been discussing it via email extensively. And I'm here representing the entire board.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. Appreciate that. All right, now we're going to open up the public hearing, but I have to start with the sign-up sheet. And the sign-up sheet we have. Just wait just a second. So we had Eric and Travis signed up to speak. So now I can open up to people that did not go on the sign-up sheet. So sir, please come up and tell us your name and your address. You need to come up to the microphone.
I'm trying to put this all together so it's concise. How much time do I have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. All right, I'm going to run quick. My name is Brian Stoll. I live at 823 West Rescue Street, which is on the corner of 8th and Rescue, right next to the school, and 2 buildings down from the Hollywood Market Yoga Studio. Keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. As these gentlemen mentioned, but I would like to extremely import the significance of what detraction that yoga studio is already doing to the neighborhood, the residences, the children, the school. I can go on and I don't want to go in circles, but they're not enforcing the parking that they were probably permitted when they applied for the variance originally because as it was mentioned, all the cars and clientele come down from the hill or all over BMWs, Mercedes, Porsches, all that. They take up all the parking on Rescue and all the residential spaces as close as they can to that studio, and makes it extremely difficult for the residences when they're coming home with groceries, especially in the winter when the sidewalks are frozen. the small children that live in the neighborhood. One of the mothers that lives right across the street has to walk several blocks because they don't want to park where they've been asked repeatedly along 9th Street, along the chain link fence, or along 8th Street, which is already an imposition. But there are some good clients at that studio, and every time I see them park where they're asked to, I make a specific point to say, thank you very much for doing that. And say, oh yeah, I know, yeah. But there's an overwhelming majority of people that just give you the bird, give you the nose up, and just keep doing it over and over again. So the parking itself is already, they're not following with what they're probably been asked or provided that variance to do with already. So they're out of bounds on that one. They already bought the building with the conditions that in the area that was already under the restrictions and capacities when they bought it, which was already overcapacitated. Now they're trying to overcapacitate it even further for what they're trying to apply for. I'm going to read and come back and forth. That size of a yoga studio already doesn't belong in that neighborhood because it's, again, not contributing anything to the residents in that area. There's already Hyde Park and there's already the Boise Co-op, which have commercial capacity, which is already overflowing. And if they want to expand a studio, that studio from yoga and massage already to a cafe and coffee, I don't see how that is even conceivably possible because the market that was there served the community of the residences, that would go to get their milk or butter and have a market serving that local area. The Boise Co-op is there now that provides that sort of thing. So, the idea that the architect said, well, it was designed as a commercial use back in 1901. Okay, that is clearly way past its
You'll need to wrap up your remarks, please.
None of the residences are happy. None of them with what they're doing now or not doing. There's already a ton of coffee shops already in Hyde Park and right down the street at the Boise Co-op. We don't need any more of that. Real big part, the elementary school.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off.
But there is a huge risk, and I've already seen near tragedies of what would very likely have been I've seen yoga parking, risking children that are crossing the streets, going to school, coming from school, getting out of school, so they can get to their yoga appointment that they're already late for on time.
Okay, that's it.
All right.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right. That's it, sir. Sir.
I understand.
Thank you.
There's so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone online who would like to testify? I saw someone's hand earlier.
Yeah, Ms. Canning, I have a Christine Reynolds.
Okay.
I've just asked to unmute. Go ahead, Christine.
Please start with your name and address for the record. Christine, we're not hearing you. Are you muted? Okay, Christine, we'll have to move on. I will circle back to you if we can, but for now we are not hearing you.
Yeah, Christine, maybe try, you're looking at your computer settings to see if your mic is connected. That'd be my one recommendation, but yeah, because we see you're off mute, but we cannot hear you. Feel free to put anything in the chat too, if you'd like.
Okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask Ms. Sewell some questions, if that'll work, or will that conflict with Christine since they're both online?
I think it's fine to go back to the applicant if you'd
Christine
like.
now?
Oh, yes. Is that Christine?
Yes.
All
I hear
right.
you. Hooray.
Hi, my name is Christine Reynolds and I live at 4700 North Bogus.
Okay, go ahead and please let us know what you want to say.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I am a customer of Hollywood Yoga, and I attended their community meeting. And I am also a general contractor. And so I wanted to speak on the variance on, both variances, the setback variance and the long-term biking variance. So for the setback variance, the setback that they've proposed is well within historical guidelines, but also it would be so much more congruent with the neighborhood than the deeper setback that the city is requesting. And as a contractor, shaving 153 square feet off their building isn't going to save them any money. So there's really no like something like that might actually make them reconsider the project. I would think, just because it would be unusual being set back so far behind the existing building. And then also they would have less space from their end goal. So that was one thing, is that honestly, from a perspective of what that street looks like, being more similar to what's existing would be more aesthetically pleasing, I guess. I have a master's in public administration, so I know the city planning term for it, but it would be congruent with the neighborhood. Additionally, with the long-term biking request, I would be more in favor of the expanded short-term biking request, because I do generally ride my bike. And I didn't have that concern until I attended the neighborhood meeting. And the only complaint that neighbors had was parking. And the gentleman at this meeting proposed reaching out to the city or ACHD and requesting permit-only parking on the street. And the gentleman that just spoke to you in person was one of the main ones that complained and said, no, they shouldn't have to go through the hassle of getting a permit to park on the street. They should be able to park on the street without that. And any suggestions that were proposed, it was just met with such resistance and hostility. I was shocked. As a business owner, I was shocked that this woman owns a yoga studio and she's just trying to offer coffee and smoothies. And so many people from the neighborhood were there to see if they could get free yoga or if they could get free drinks. If we support this, what do we get out of it? Like, the grift was so disappointing. As a resident of Boise, I was absolutely shocked at the way they treated Sally Riley. And to add to that, these houses all have garages. So I don't understand why they park on the street, but I started thinking about it, and I ride my bike and I can see those long-term bike storage being filled by residents. Okay, so yes, to conclude, I appreciate your time today. I know you have a very busy job with all these applications, and we appreciate your review and your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now I'd like to talk to Ms. Sewell and ask her a few questions if I could.
Hello, yes.
Yes, can one of you bring up the site plan? Kevin's working on it.
Okay.
There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me how big is the landscape buffer on Residue and how wide is the sidewalk?
Residue is, I believe, 6 foot, and the landscape buffer is around 6'6".
Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Sorry. They're about the same. There's 15 foot of right of way on 8th Street and 14 foot of right of way on Residue side. So the landscape buffers are a little bit narrower, I think, on the Residue side.
And you're saying that those are all in the ACHD right away?
Yes.
And what is the distance from the back of the sidewalk to the building?
On Residue, it is it's, I think, 3 feet.
3 feet.
Yeah.
And then now let's turn the corner on 8th. So from, let's see. I believe I see your property line. So the building currently is just 2 feet off the property line.
Correct.
And from the property line to the back of curb, what do we have there?
I believe that's the 15 feet.
That's 15 feet. Okay. And then we have 2 feet. Okay. Thank you. And there's already going back to Residue, I'm sorry, in that 3 feet between the sidewalk, back of sidewalk and the building, that's an established plantings, or are those
Established.
established? Okay. All right, and will you be presenting the rebuttal, or will Ms. Riley be presenting the rebuttal?
I will.
Okay, we can hear now a rebuttal.
Okay. First, I want to comment on Nina's comments. And I do want to bring back up the precedent we mentioned on in Hyde Park with Lost Grove, just because Mr. Hagan did bring that up. With a variance, it doesn't matter what your where you're located. It's the same criteria to review that. So the fact that Lost Grove is in Hyde Park, they were still had to prove the same hardship. Was not a detriment to the the neighborhood and that. And in review of staff report, and I just want to make sure this is on the record, because in staff's report, as I mentioned, this was approved. That staff found that the existing building is a contributing structure and that it was historic. There was a limited building area, noting that the expansion to the north would compromise the historic integrity of the building. An expansion at the rear of the building would remove parking. Staff also noted that the setbacks, which are on the south, the addition would be relatively small and would allow for more desired seating by the business. And so granting the construction to the property line would provide opportunities on site to expand the customer serving area of the business. And additionally, in staff's report, this project that mentioned Lost Grove was approved for a variance. They found that there was no, it would not be materially detrimental to the neighbors encroaching into that setback, and they built straight to the property line. There was no setback. So I think, Mr. Eric's comments, although we're in a different part of town, we're still in a historic district and we're dealing with an historic building that we're trying to maintain the historic integrity. We have limited areas that we can expand, and it's, difficult, if not impossible, to comply with the zoning requirements for a residential district, not only in the historic district, but with a historic building that is a commercial use. And so applying, residential criteria to a commercial use makes it difficult to expand, and it impacts, Sally's ability to continue this historic commercial use of this site and of this property. There's comments about parking, and we realize that parking will be addressed with the conditional use process. I do want to make note that we are currently parked per an approved city application process. The 4 parking spots that we have in the rear do comply with code, and we do meet the conditional use permit requirements that are with the project right now. So I don't want to get too much into parking. I will say with the long-term parking, I did have an image that I was going to show, but long-term parking, this is new. I have not done one before, but the specific criteria for putting it outside the structure, we have limited areas that we can do any kind of outdoor parking, secured parking area, because we cannot put that in the setbacks. And we already have parking, so to provide an exterior long-term bike parking would have to go into a existing parking stall. And we would really like to not remove any of that parking that we already have, to put it inside the building, because long-term parking, bike parking takes physical space, an access aisle, and there's certain criteria in the code that we have to meet. And to try and put this in the building, it's about 70 square feet. By the time you provide space for 5 bikes, an access aisle, the door into it, you have to get there. And so it's really hard on small sites, infill sites, to comply with this. And with our proposed use, as this is not a multifamily, it's not someplace where someone's going to come to work 8 hours a day. It's in a walkable area. We just felt like this was too much for the site, this use. Now, maybe if it was a multifamily project, certainly that might happen. But even as staff has noted in the report, the chances of development occurring in this area is probably not going to happen because of the amount of contributing structures. And I don't see that this site is really going to change that. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, no, there is not, sir, sorry. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask staff a couple questions to figure out how to operate this. I would suggest that, I'll tell you right now, I hear you about the parking, but that is really nothing to do with me today other than the long-term bicycle parking. So the on-street parking is not within my purview to do anything today. There will be a conditional use permit hearing, and that is where you should address those concerns. That will be the best forum for hearing those concerns. So I heard you, I understand, and kind of paints a fuller picture for me. I appreciate that, but it's not within my purview to do anything about the parking today. No, sir, I've closed the public hearing, so you will need to you can talk to staff later, sir.
Yeah.
All right, let the reflector, all right, there we go. Okay. Thank you. Okay, staff. The 8th Street. Are there hardscape elements allowed in a landscape buffer?
Ms. Canning, yes, we do have areas in which hardscapes have been allowed within a landscape buffer. We show typically that it's just, landscaping then with trees, but yes, there are allowances for things like seats, seat walls, and other features similar.
Seat walls and what else?
Low, yeah.
Help me here.
Yes, Messina. Yeah, so low wall, actual planters are also allowed. Street furnishing items, so benches, trash cans, things of that nature, can also be allowed as long as there is landscaping as well.
And what about short-term parking? Is that an allowed element within a landscape buffer?
Ms. Canning, yes, short-term bike parking is allowed within the landscape planters.
Okay. Okay. Let's dig in. I guess we'll go through them one by one. Let's start on residue. As an overall note, I would like the reference to the being in the North End neighborhood and historic overlay as a hardship be removed from all the findings. I'm not willing to set a precedent that every property in the north end is entitled to a variance just because they're in the north end. With regard to the residue landscape buffer and sidewalk, I will grant the variance given that it's a non-conforming structure and that to build it to current code would require removal of the structure. And to even move it closer to the building there along that sidewalk would make it difficult for bicyclists and pedestrians and others traveling down there. So I will grant the variance for to maintain the existing streetscape along Residue. Along 8th Street, given future approval by the Historic Preservation Commission, I will allow within the area that should be grass within that landscape buffer, if 50% of it has either bikes, streetscape furniture, planters, as long as 50% of that area has those items in it, I will not make them pull up the concrete and put in grass. So I'm basically approving the existing streetscape there under those conditions. And again, there's a non-conforming building, and building it to the full current standards would require tearing down the non-conforming building. With regard to the 10-foot setback, I see no reason that they can't meet the 10-foot setback, so that variance is denied. With regard to the long-term parking spaces, I looked all over code hoping that this really wasn't a variance request, but unfortunately it is. It's not really related to a quality of the property, but it does come under my purview. But what I heard was that aside from possibly 2 people, no one's going to be there for more than 2 to 3 hours. And these spots are likely going to end up inside because they are constrained on where they can build outside. And I know for me, if it's just 2 or 3 hours, I'm probably going to put my bike in the rack rather than haul it inside and try and find a place for it. So I will grant the variance to provide 2 long-term parking spaces instead of 5. Is that all of them? We there?
That's it.
All
Got it
right.
there.
Okay. And with that, we have reached the end of the agenda and are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.